wanted to make an addendum to the sizzle reel Lord of the Rings videos that I participated in with Nick, because I had mentioned a few things from the Silmarillion, and based on my memory, which I hadn't read that in at least 10 years. And I had mentioned in the second video, I had mentioned this letter that Christopher Tolkien published in the foreword to the Silmarillion, at least this printing. This is a beautiful volume from the local library. Please support your local library. So in this letter, let's see, from a letter by J.R.R. Tolkien to Milton Waldman, 1951. So he was writing this to, I believe, to a publisher to sort of give an overview of his mythology and the creation of Middle-earth and what he was seeking to do with multiple stories from the same universe, sort of based in the same languages, same histories, and create the entire mythology of Tolkien. So he was trying to sum that up in a letter to give the publisher some idea of, I think, the connectedness and the overall story arc. And there's a segment where he describes the Second Age, which, from what I have read and seen, seems to be the focus of the new Amazon TV show. So I just wanted to read a few paragraphs from this letter where he sums up the Second Age in context to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Let's see. And remember, he's essentially trying to tie together all his notes and thoughts and creations from, this is 1951, so at least 20 years, probably 30. I'm not sure, but anyway. So I'll begin here. I'm just going to read about 4 paragraphs because it ties directly to Sauron and the creation of the rings and what was happening in the Second Age. The First Age, we have the creation of Middle-earth and the elves, and we have Melkor steal the Silmarils and eventually be defeated. So when he's defeated, and Western Middle-earth is largely, Northern and Western Middle-earth are largely ravaged and destroyed by this war. There's a lot to go into there, but we'll just skip to the Second Age for now, because that, I think, is where the show is focused. So this is Tolkien's own words in a letter to a publisher about his works. The next cycle deals, or would deal, with the Second Age, but it is on Earth a dark age, and not very much of its history is or need be told. In the great battles against the first enemy, that's Morgoth, or Melkor, the first creation, I believe the first offspring sort of Eru Ilúvatar, the one god. So in the great battles against the first enemy, the lands were broken and ruined, and the west of Middle-earth became desolate. We learned that the exiled elves were, if not commanded, at least sternly counseled to return into the west and there be at peace. They were not to dwell permanently in Valinor again, but in the lonely isle of Eressëa, within sight of the Blessed Realm. That's the sons of Fëanor, the exiled elves. The men of the 3 houses were rewarded for their valor and faithful alliance by being allowed to dwell westernmost of all mortals in the great Atlantis Isle. That's Atlantis in quotes. Tolkien there sort of giving a reference, I think. The great Atlantis Isle of Númenor. The doom or gift of God of mortality. The gods, of course, cannot abrogate, but the Númenorians have a great span of life. They set sail and leave Middle-earth and establish a great kingdom of mariners just within furthest sight of Eressëa, but not of Valinor. Most of the high elves depart also back into the west, not all. Some men akin to the Númenorians remain in the land not far from the shores of the sea. These are, I believe, Aragorn's ancestors. Some of the exiles will not return or delay their return. The way west is ever open to immortals, and the Grey Havens are ever ready to set sail. The orcs and other monsters bred by the first enemy are not wholly destroyed, and there is Sauron. In the Silmarillion and Tales of the First Age, Sauron was a being of Valinor perverted to the service of the enemy and becoming his chief captain and servant. He repents in fear when the first enemy is utterly defeated, but in the end does not do as was commanded, return to the judgment of the gods. He lingers in Middle-earth, very slowly, beginning with fair motives, the reorganization and rehabilitation of the ruin of Middle-earth neglected by the gods. He becomes a reincarnation of evil, that's capital evil, and a thing lusting for complete power, also in capital letters. And so consumed ever more fiercely with hate, especially of God and elves, all through the twilight of the Second Age, the shadow is growing in the east of Middle-earth, spreading its sway more and more over men who multiply as the elves begin to fade. The three main themes of the Second Age are thus the delaying elves that lingered in Middle-earth, Sauron's growth to becoming a new Dark Lord, master and god of men, and the tale of Numenor, Atlantis. They are dealt with in two tales, The Rings of Power and The Downfall of Numenor. Both are the essential background to The Hobbit and its sequel. Okay, let's see. Skip ahead a little bit. He talks about the elves that lingered in Middle-earth, and the dwarves, the friendship of dwarves and elves during the Second Age, which is alluded to in Lord of the Rings. Eregion, at the western feet of the misty mountains adjacent to the mines of Moria, the major realm of the dwarves in the Second Age, there arose a friendship between the usually hostile folk of elves and dwarves for the first and only time, and smithcraft reached its highest development. But many of the elves listened to Sauron. He was still fair in that early time, and his motives and those of the elves seemed to go partly together, the healing of the desolate lands. Make Middle-earth great again. Sauron found their weak point in suggesting that, helping one another, they could make Western Middle-earth as beautiful as Valinor. It was really a veiled attack on the gods, an incitement to try and make a separate, independent paradise. Gil-galad, the elf, repulsed all such overtures, as also did Elrond. But at Eregion great work began, and the elves came their nearest to falling to magic and machinery. He explained that earlier in the letter, how he considers magic and the ease of technology and machinery to be evils. He's talking about, I guess, not divine light, but other forms of magic shortcuts, I guess. With the aid of Sauron's lore, they made rings of power. Power is an ominous and sinister word in all these tales, except as applied to the gods. Okay, so this one last key point. The chief power of all the rings alike was the prevention or slowing of decay, as in change. So the prevention of change. The preservation of what is desired, or loved, or its semblance. Think about what, like, as Gollum loses his humanity or hobbitness or whatever, his grasp of social living, and from the very beginning he commits a murder. To preserve his lust for this ring, to preserve his bond with this ring, and it preserves his life in a very unnatural and stretched out way. But So the preservation or slowing of decay. So this is more or less an elvish motive, but also they enhance the natural powers of a possessor, thus approaching magic. A motive easily corruptible into evil, a lust for domination. And finally, they had other powers more directly derived from Sauron, such as rendering invisible the material body and making things of the invisible world visible. So those are like added treats to seduce the mortals that might happen to try it on. But there's a lot more here about the timeline that I think we're going to be exploring. I just wanted to clear some things up because I had made some statements, especially on the first video, without having read anything in 10 years, at least. So wanted to clear that up, and thanks to Nicholas, and peace. We'll see you soon.